In 1975, a candy bar came with a ruler printed right on the wrapper, 8 full inches of braided chocolate and caramel that you could trade for almost anything in the cafeteria. Today, you cannot buy it anywhere on Earth. But here is the twist. Number 8 on this list started a nationwide panic so severe the company took out full-page newspaper ads to prove it would not make your stomach explode. And number 1, the king of every lunch table in America, vanished so completely that grown adults still write letters begging for its return. These 25 snacks were the currency of every 1970s playground, worth more than lunch money, fought over at every table. Before we start, hit that subscribe button, because you are about to remember flavors you forgot you ever tasted. Let us count down. Number 25. Pizza Spins. Nabisco released these little pinwheel crackers, and for a few golden years, they ruled the trade table. Each one was a crunchy spiral dusted in tomato and cheese powder that tasted like a pepperoni pizza someone had shrunk down to the size of a quarter. Kids poured them straight from the box into a napkin, counting them out like poker chips, 3 pizza spins for a fruit roll, 5 for a whole dessert. The smell alone could start a bidding war 2 tables over. They were salty, tangy, and just greasy enough to leave orange fingerprints on every worksheet you touched that afternoon. Then, quietly, Nabisco pulled them from shelves. No announcement, no farewell. One week they were in the vending machine, the next they simply were not. Grown adults still describe the taste from memory, insisting nothing on a modern shelf comes close. Number 24. Danish Go-Rounds. Kellogg's built these to challenge the Pop-Tart, and for a while they won hearts across America. Instead of a flat rectangle, the Go-Round was a rolled pastry ribbon, flaky and layered, oozing warm fruit filling from the coil when you bit in. Cherry and strawberry were the prizes. Cinnamon was the one you offered up in a trade. Kids would slip them into the toaster in the school cafeteria if a teacher was not watching, filling the whole lunchroom with the smell of hot sugar. A single go-round could buy you a seat at the popular table for the afternoon. But Kellogg's could never quite match the Pop-Tart's grip on the breakfast aisle. And by the end of the decade, production stopped cold. The spiral pastry, the messy filling, the flaky ribbon, all of it disappeared, leaving only a hollow spot where a Lunchbox legend used to sit. Number 23. Koogle flavored peanut butter. Kraft looked at plain peanut butter and decided it needed a mascot with googly eyes and 4 impossible flavors. Koogle came in chocolate, cinnamon, banana, and vanilla, a swirled spread that turned a boring sandwich into something you actually wanted to eat. A banana Koogle sandwich in your lunchbox was social currency, worth at least a bag of chips and maybe a cookie thrown in. Kids peeled back the bread just to show off the swirl before trading half away. The commercials featured a wobbly-eyed creature singing the jingle, and every kid in the neighborhood could recite it. But the novelty burned bright and fast. Once the cartoon shine wore off, parents went back to ordinary peanut butter, and Kraft quietly retired the whole line. The googly-eyed mascot vanished, and with him went the only peanut butter that ever tasted like dessert. Number 22. Funny Face drink mix. Before juice pouches, there was Funny Face, the powdered drink that came in a paper packet stamped with a goofy grinning character, Goofy Grape, Freckle Face, Strawberry, Jolly Ollie Orange, each one a cartoon you knew by heart. You dumped the powder into a pitcher of water, stirred, and watched it bloom into a color no fruit had ever produced in nature. A thermos full of Goofy Grape was worth serious trading power at lunch, and the packets themselves became collectibles passed around like baseball cards. The flavor was sweet, sharp, and completely artificial in the best possible way. Kids drank it faster than their mothers could mix it. But taste shifted, ready-made drinks flooded the shelves, and the grinning faces slowly disappeared from the grocery aisle. Today, the characters survive only in the memories of kids who stained their lips purple every single afternoon. Number 21. Screaming Yellow Zonkers. Sold in a bright black box covered in nonsense jokes, Zonkers were sweet-glazed popcorn that dared to be different. The candy coating was buttery and crackly, somewhere between caramel corn and a sugar cloud, and the box itself was half the fun, printed with absurd cartoons and gags you read aloud to the whole table. A box of Zonkers arriving in a lunchbox meant a crowd would form. Kids traded fistfuls of them for anything sweet, and the empty box got saved because the jokes were too good to throw away. It was one of the first snacks that treated the packaging like part of the experience, and children ate it up in every sense. The brand hung on for decades, but eventually the sweet yellow popcorn was discontinued and the screaming stopped for good. Nothing on the shelf today crackles quite the same way. Number 20. Freakies cereal. Every kid in the 1970s wanted a Freakies box on the breakfast table, not for the cereal exactly, but for the little monster mascots and the prize buried inside. The Freakies were a family of googly creatures, and the sugary cereal came shaped like tiny trees you fished out of the milk. But the real value was the toy. A complete set of Freakies figurines could make you the richest kid in 3rd grade. Children brought them to school in their pockets, trading duplicates during recess with the seriousness of stockbrokers. The cereal itself was sweet and crunchy, but nobody remembers the flavor half as well as they remember the tiny plastic monsters. When the marketing push faded, the cereal was pulled from shelves, taking the whole monster family with it. Those little figures now sell for real money among collectors who never stopped hunting. Number 19. Kaboom cereal. General Mills gave the world a cereal shaped like smiling circus clown faces, and somehow it worked. Kaboom was bright, sugary, and unmistakable, each yellow ring grinning up at you from the bowl. Kids who had it in their lunchbox as a dry snack could trade a handful for almost anything because the clown shapes made even a small bag feel special. The cereal had a slightly citrus tang under all the sweetness, and it stayed crunchy in milk longer than most, which mattered to a kid, savoring every bite. Parents liked that the box claimed extra vitamins. Kids liked that it looked like a carnival in a bowl. But Kaboom never quite became a breakfast giant, and after years of slow sales, General Mills finally discontinued it. The grinning clown faces vanished from the cereal aisle, and an entire generation lost their favorite circus in a box. Number 18. Shake-A-Puddin. This was less a snack and more an event. Shake-A-Puddin came as a powder and a special plastic cup with a tight lid. You poured in milk, snapped the lid on, and shook it as hard as your arms could manage until the liquid magically thickened into pudding. Kids in the cafeteria would shake theirs so violently that whole tables rattled, and the sound became a lunchroom ritual. A full cup of homemade pudding made right there at the table was worth a fortune in trades because you got to watch the magic happen. Chocolate and butterscotch were the champions. The fun was in the making, the shaking, the reveal. But the novelty faded and instant pudding cups arrived that required no effort at all. Shake-A-Puddin was discontinued, and the satisfying ritual of shaking your own dessert into being disappeared from lunch tables forever. Number 17. Jell-O 1, 2, 3. This was gelatin that performed a trick. You mixed the powder, poured it into a glass, and as it set in the refrigerator, it separated all on its own into 3 distinct layers: a creamy top, a mousse-like middle, and a firm jelly bottom. One box, 3 textures, like magic in a cup. A kid who showed up with a chilled glass of triple-layer Jell-O was the envy of the whole lunch table, and slices of that dessert were traded with real ceremony. Parents loved that it looked fancy for almost no effort. Kids loved watching it separate through the glass. It was the dessert that seemed to defy the laws of the kitchen. But the formula was finicky and expensive to produce, and eventually the layers stopped selling. Jell-O 1, 2, 3 was discontinued, and gelatin went back to being just one boring layer again. Number 16. Carnation breakfast bars. Long before the modern granola bar took over, Carnation breakfast bars promised a whole breakfast in a chocolate-covered rectangle. They were dense, chewy, and coated in a thin cocoa shell that made them feel more like candy than nutrition. Mothers packed them thinking they were healthy. Kids traded them like they were dessert. A chocolate chip breakfast bar could fetch a whole bag of chips at the right table because it tasted far better than anything that claimed to be good for you had any right to. The bar filled you up through a long morning of arithmetic, and the chocolate coating meant you never felt cheated. But formulas changed, competitors flooded the market, and the original breakfast bars quietly slipped away. The chewy, chocolate-shelled version that 1970s kids remember was discontinued, and no reboot has ever recaptured that exact candy disguised as breakfast taste. Number 15. Astro Pops. Shaped like a rocket ship and pointed at both ends, the Astro Pop was a hard candy engineered for the space age. 3 flavors stacked into a cone of sugar so hard it could last an entire afternoon of recess. Cherry, lemon, and pineapple layered up into a candy that looked like it belonged on a launch pad. The sharp point was practically a dare, and every kid tested it against their tongue. An Astro Pop was premium trade material, worth 2 or 3 lesser candies, because it lasted longer than anything else in the lunchbox. The rocket shape tied it to the moon landings that still filled every kid's imagination. Production was difficult, and the candy was pulled for years at a time, disappearing so completely that fans mourned it. The original 1970s rocket, in its exact old form, became a ghost of the space-crazed decade that created it. Number 14. Wacky Wafers. A packet of Wacky Wafers held a stack of thin, chalky, intensely fruity discs in colors that did not occur anywhere in nature. Each wafer was a single blast of flavor: watermelon, banana, apple, so concentrated it made your cheeks pull in. Kids ate them like poker chips and traded them the same way, the rare colors commanding premium prices at the lunch table. The wafers snapped cleanly in half, which made splitting a trade easy and fair. They were pure sugar, with no pretense of being anything else, and that honesty is exactly why kids love them. A full pack could keep a mouth puckered through an entire class period, but the flavors and the fragile wafer shape fell out of favor, and the original Wacky Wafers were discontinued for years, leaving a whole generation chasing a fruity intensity nothing else has ever matched. Number 13. Choco-lite Bar. Nestle took a chocolate bar and filled it with air, creating a candy full of tiny, crunchy bubbles that dissolved the second they hit your tongue. The Choco-lite was light, airy, and strangely addictive, a chocolate that felt like it weighed nothing at all. Kids loved the way it crumbled and melted differently from a solid bar, and that novelty made it a hot item on the trade circuit. You could snap off a piece and watch the honeycomb of little pockets inside. A Choco-lite in the lunchbox meant your friends would circle back all through lunch, hoping for a corner. The airy texture was its whole identity, and no other bar in the cafeteria did it. But sales cooled, Nestle shifted its focus, and the Choco-lite was discontinued. The light, bubbly chocolate that felt like biting into a cloud simply stopped appearing on shelves. Number 12. Summit Bar. The Summit was a cookie bar wrapped in chocolate, a wafer crisp layered with peanut cream and coated in a smooth cocoa shell. It sat in that perfect zone between a candy bar and a cookie, and 1970s kids could not get enough. Each pack held 2 bars, which made it ideal for trading, one to keep and one to bargain with. The crunch of the wafer against the creamy peanut center was the whole appeal, a texture that felt fancier than the price suggested. A Summit bar could command a strong trade because it delivered 2 treats in one wrapper. Kids snapped them in half to share or to seal a deal. But the crowded candy aisle pushed it out, and eventually the Summit bar was discontinued in America. The crisp peanut cream cookie bar vanished, and its most loyal fans have been searching for a replacement ever since. Number 11. Bonkers. Bonkers came with one of the most memorable ad campaigns of the era, a giant piece of fruit falling from the sky and flattening someone. The candy itself was a chewy square with a fruity shell wrapped around a soft, even more intense fruit center. 2 layers of flavor in one small cube. Kids traded them by the piece, and the rare flavors were hoarded like treasure. The chew was substantial enough to keep your jaw busy through a whole study hall, and the burst of the inner filling was the payoff everyone chased. The commercials were so absurd that repeating them was half the fun of owning the candy. For years, Bonkers were a lunchbox staple across America. Then they were discontinued, leaving behind only the memory of that falling fruit jingle and a chewy, double-layered flavor that no modern candy has managed to bring back. Number 10. Fruit Stripe Gum. Every kid recognized the zebra on the wrapper and the rainbow stripes running down each stick of gum. Fruit Stripe promised a burst of fruity flavor, and delivered it for about 45 glorious seconds before going completely flat. But those 45 seconds were magic, and the gum came with a bonus: temporary tattoos of the zebra printed right on the wrapper. Kids licked the wrapper and stamped the zebra onto their arms, which made a single pack worth trading twice, once for the gum and once for the tattoos. The rainbow stripes were unmistakable, and a full pack was a small fortune at recess. It hung on for decades on nostalgia alone. But after generations of kids, the company finally discontinued Fruit Stripe entirely. The zebra retired, the rainbow stripes faded, and the fastest fading gum in America was gone for good. Number 9. Pom Poms. Sold in a little box like movie candy, Pom Poms were bite-sized caramels drenched in chocolate, chewy and rich, and impossible to eat quietly. The box rattled when you shook it, a sound that announced dessert had arrived at the lunch table. Kids poured them out and traded them one at a time because a single Pom Pom was satisfying enough to be worth its own deal. The caramel stretched when you bit down, pulling into long ribbons that got stuck in your teeth for the rest of the afternoon. They were the perfect combination of chocolate and chew, small enough to share, but good enough that you rarely wanted to. For decades, the little boxes were a reliable treat in lunchboxes across the country. Then the caramel and chocolate bites were discontinued, and the familiar rattle of a Pom Poms box went silent for good. Number 8. Pop Rocks. Here is where things get wild. Pop Rocks were carbonated candy, tiny crystals that crackled, snapped, and exploded the instant they touched the moisture of your tongue. No candy had ever done that before. Kids poured them into their mouths and let the whole thing fizz and pop while their friends leaned in to listen. A single packet could hold a lunch table hostage, but then a rumor tore across every school in America that mixing Pop Rocks with soda would make your stomach explode. Panic spread so fast that the company reportedly took out newspaper ads and sent letters to schools insisting the candy was completely safe. It was, of course. Nothing exploded, but the fear, combined with shifting sales, pulled the original Pop Rocks off shelves for years. The exploding candy that once ruled the playground became the stuff of urban legend, whispered about long after it vanished. Number 7. The $100,000 Bar. With a name that promised riches, this bar was a bar of chewy caramel studded with crisped rice and wrapped in milk chocolate. Kids treated the name literally, joking that trading one away was like handing over a fortune. The caramel was soft and stretchy, the rice added a satisfying crunch, and the whole thing was messy in the best way, sticking to your fingers and demanding to be licked off. A $100,000 bar in the lunchbox made you feel rich, and it traded like it, commanding top dollar in candy and chips alike. The crinkle of the wrapper alone drew a crowd. Over the years, the bar was rebranded and its recipe quietly altered, and the exact version 1970s kids remember under its original name and formula disappeared. What is left carries a different name, and old fans swear it never tasted quite the same again. Number 6. The Reggie Bar. In 1978, a candy bar was named after a baseball star, and on opening day, fans threw thousands of them onto the field in celebration. The Reggie Bar was a round patty of caramel and peanuts covered in chocolate, and it arrived wrapped in genuine sports mania. Every kid who followed baseball wanted one, and that demand made it the single most valuable item on many trade tables. Owning a Reggie Bar meant owning a piece of the season everyone was talking about. The peanuts and caramel were good, but the name was what made it legend. For a short, glorious stretch, it was the most talked about candy in America. But the hype could not last forever. As the excitement faded, so did the bar, and the Reggie was discontinued. It burned brightest of all, then vanished almost as fast as it had appeared. Number 5. Space Food Sticks. Born straight out of the space program, these chewy tubes were marketed as the very snack astronauts ate in orbit. And for kids raised on the moon landings, that was everything. Space Food Sticks came in chocolate, peanut butter, and caramel, dense and chewy and vaguely futuristic. A single stick in your lunchbox made you feel like you had smuggled cargo off a rocket ship, and that fantasy made them worth serious trades. The chewy texture was unlike any other candy, somewhere between a caramel and an energy bar decades before energy bars existed. Kids ate them slowly, imagining zero gravity. The space-age branding was the whole magic, tying every bite to the astronauts kids idolized. But the space craze cooled, taste moved on, and space food sticks were discontinued. The snack that let every kid pretend they were floating among the stars drifted out of orbit for good. Number 4. The 7-Up Candy Bar. Not the soda, this was a chocolate bar divided into 8 little pillow-shaped sections, and every single one held a different filling. Nougat here, caramel there, mint, coconut, buttercream, cherry. Each bite a surprise. It was like getting a whole box of chocolates in a single bar. Kids negotiated over individual sections, trading the mint away and hoarding the caramel because no two pieces were the same. Opening one at the lunch table drew a crowd instantly, everyone hoping to bargain for their favorite filling. The variety made it the most strategic trade item in the cafeteria. A bar you could break into 8 separate deals. But producing 8 different fillings in one bar was expensive and complicated, and eventually the company gave up. The 7-Up bar was discontinued, and with it went the only candy that turned a single wrapper into a treasure hunt. Number 3. Powerhouse Bar. Big, heavy, and unapologetically enormous, the Powerhouse Bar was a slab of fudge, caramel, and peanuts that felt like it weighed a pound in your hand. It was the bar you bought when you were truly hungry, thick enough to snap into pieces and share with an entire table. Kids valued it for sheer size, because one Powerhouse could feed a small trading circle, and that made it a heavyweight in every sense. The peanuts gave it crunch, the caramel gave it chew, and the fudge held the whole massive thing together. It did not pretend to be fancy, it just delivered more candy per wrapper than almost anything else on the shelf. But the giant bar fell out of production as taste shifted toward smaller, lighter candies. The Powerhouse was discontinued, and the biggest, heaviest trade item in any 1970s lunchbox disappeared from shelves entirely. Number 2. Marathon Bar. Braided like a rope of chocolate and caramel, the Marathon Bar stretched a full 8 inches long, and the wrapper even printed a ruler on the back so you could prove it. It was the longest-lasting candy bar in the cafeteria, not just in size but in eating time, because the open braid meant you chewed and pulled at it for what felt like an entire lunch period. That length made it legendary at the trade table. A Marathon Bar could buy almost anything because it looked like twice the candy for the same money. Kids held it up against the printed ruler and marveled every single time. The caramel stretched, the chocolate cracked, and the whole thing seemed to go on forever. Then, at the start of the 1980s, it was discontinued in America. The longest bar in the lunchbox snapped out of existence, and no braided candy has ever replaced it. Number 1. Marathon's rival, the original Milkshake Bar. Topping our list is the candy bar that ruled more lunch tables than any other, the Milkshake Bar, a thick log of malted nougat and caramel wrapped in milk chocolate that tasted exactly like a frozen malt shop treat in solid form. It was creamy, chewy, and rich enough that a single bar felt like a genuine reward at the end of a long school morning. This was the gold standard of trades, the bar that everyone wanted and few were willing to give up. Kids guarded it, negotiated fiercely for it, and remembered exactly who owed them a Milkshake Bar for weeks afterward. The malted flavors set it apart from every ordinary chocolate bar in the cafeteria, a taste that captured the soda fountains of an earlier America. When it was finally discontinued, grown adults kept writing to the company for years, begging for its return. It never came back the same, and that lingering ache is exactly why it sits at number 1. So there they are, the 25 snacks that made every 1970s lunch table a trading floor. Which one hit you the hardest? Was it the braided Marathon Bar, the exploding Pop Rocks, or the Reggie Bar fans threw onto the field? Drop your favorite in the comments and tell me which one you would bring back tomorrow, because these were never just snacks. They were currency, memory, and the taste of a decade that is gone. You remembered them. Now let someone else remember too.